Emma's little sister Connie is getting adopted today. It's a sad day for everyone, particularly because none of the children ever adopted out from Gracefield Orphanage send letters back to the other kids there, who are all naturally quite curious about the rest of the world that they've never seen. Perhaps it is just that wonderful that they never have a moment to write. After all, Gracefield is amazing, and it's such a small fraction of what their books say is out there. The rest of the world has to be wonderful too, right? That night, Emma and another orphan, Norman, notice she has left her favorite bunny plushie behind. Not wanting her to be separated from yet another piece of their home, they take their friend Ray's advice and go out to the gate to return it to her. Their mother says to never go near that gate, but this has to be an exception, right? She can't possibly leave her favorite toy behind. But when they get to the gate, it's quiet. Oddly so, they can't find their mother or Connie anywhere. And so Emma instead goes to place the rabbit in the back of the van, here to transport Connie away, and recoils in horror. There is a corpse in the back of the van, and it can only be their littlest sister. There are voices, horrible ones, and in fear they hide underneath the truck as they watch through the crack to see towering, terrifying demons throw what is left of their sister into a tube, remarking on how good she would taste to eat. How they can't afford the merchandise here. This can't be right. Where's their mom? Is she okay? She came with Connie. And then they hear their mother's voice, calm as a still pond, detailing the shipping dates for the other children. Emma and Norman flee, and Emma screams into the dirt because her entire reality has just been shattered. Their mother is a monster. Monsters are real, and that outside world they've been promised is nothing but an illusion. Escaping this prison, because they now know that is what it truly is not simple. They are children, and they are the oldest of the bunch in the farm. There is a huge wall around the perimeter, unknowns outside, tracking devices, and of course, their mother, who knows something must be wrong, because she found the bunny plush discarded at the gate. They have no hope of beating her in a real fight. They are 11, and she has demons and weapons and helpers. No, to beat this place and get the rest of their family out alive, they're going to have to outsmart her. Hey everyone, I'm Ghost, your host with the most. Today, let's talk about non-battle battle. What is non-battle battle, or NBB? That's the question of my day. I personally define it as any show that utilizes mental or social warfare over physical battle. There can be fights, but the point is not the fighting itself. In Spy Family, for example, Lloyd naturally gets into fights as his job as a spy, but the show is not Lloyd on spy adventures. It is Lloyd trying to hide that he is a spy from his family. The plotline or formula is created on the premise that the fighting is not the primary action. Instead, it's played with a set of moves, tricks, and misdirections. Let's take probably the most obvious example to ever obvious example, Death Note. Death Note, if you've somehow not heard of it, is a television show about, to quote a Tumblr post I can no longer find, a man seeing a slippery slope and grabbing a sled. The important part is that this guy here, Light, can remote control murder people without leaving any physical evidence. Naturally, tying that to any one person is extremely difficult. So the world's greatest detective, L, has to try and create clues and opportunities as Light tries to mislead him. It is, essentially, murder chess. Because of the non-physical nature of what Light is doing, the show has to use alternative methods of creating tension. Let's take possibly its most famous scene.
I'll take a potato chip and eat it.
Yes, it is silly. It's very silly, but it's effective. This is, by this point in the show, the closest L has ever come to Light. L has bugged Light's house and installed several cameras in his bedroom. To succeed at this interaction, Light must prove that he isn't Kira by killing criminals with up-to-date information while seemingly having no access to it. So L can see the criminals dying at the same time as Light Yagami doing absolutely nothing. So he uses the bag of potato chips, puts a small television inside, and a scrap of the Death Note. This way he can do homework with one hand and kill criminals with his other. by catching the occasional pieces of information off the TV. Because the news is live, this proves that Kira has to be out there somewhere else killing criminals. Therefore, Light is temporarily exonerated. It may not be a real fight, but the tension is created wonderfully with music, voice, shot composition, as well as the emotional weight of the action itself. Having El's equipment inside Light's house feels claustrophobic and uncomfortable, like he's encroaching on his territory. This moment is him reclaiming the board. It might just be Light in his bedroom dramatically monologuing to himself about chips, but it's as much a battle as it would be if they were throwing knives at each other. However, as I mentioned, this treads the line very neatly between keeping the more serious tone and downright absurdity. Considering all a non-battle battle series needs to work is a problem and at least 2 characters equally dedicated to it, several comedy shows went down this route to great success. Love is War is a television show about 2 stuck-up, perfectly perfect high schoolers in love. Except they're so prideful, neither will ever admit it, as they both see love as something to be won. They regularly attempt to trick the other into admitting romantic feelings first by trying to trap them in various kinds of social convention, where they would have to quote-unquote lose. And you can see the parallels almost immediately. Characters deeply committed to their personal goal that would do anything to achieve it. But instead of solving the issues with their fists, they have to go at it with their minds. The format creates fantastic tension when applied correctly. One thing that's very important, you will notice in almost all my examples, is a set of internal rules. If a fantastical element is invited into these settings, what it does has to be outlined clearly. For example, the Death Note lists out all of its instructions to the viewer, so we can follow along as Light uses that information in his own schemes. Ace Attorney shows you all the clues and pieces of information so you yourself can go at it in court and solve the crime. The Promised Neverland gives you layouts and the exact barriers the children face. This is because for a good NBB to work, the audience must be able to follow the line of logic. You'll notice that a lot of the main characters here have very strong personalities, and that's to let the audience get intimately familiar with their values and eccentricities. The way these characters interact with the rules is the backbone of any non-battle battle series, so they have to be someone the audience can get to understand. Light Yagami, despite having the option to spend half his remaining lifespan to obtain a magical power that would let him automatically defeat L, does not take the deal. Even though his primary goal is to defeat him, and the consequences for not doing so is jail and then death, we know by this point that Light's pride and God complex means he would not accept victory just to rule for half the time he potentially would have if he won on his own. No, he has to win independently because he believes he is this world's savior, and he must be around to keep it on the correct path. It's not always that complicated. The Ace Attorney prosecutors are eccentric whack jobs whose motivation is to get in your way and win the case because that's their job. But we can guess what they're going to pull out next because of how generally strange they are at all times. By letting them know these characters and what kind of decisions they might make in any given scenario, it lets the audience look at their mistakes and victories and play along with them as they go. That involvement is a part of why I love this style of storytelling so much. Where a fight scene can make you afraid for potential consequences of a character, as the audience you can often feel very separated from what's going on. That's why all the best fight scenes use an emotional core instead of simply an action-based one, to add personal weight to the conflict. But with NBB, everything is played as if it has weight. Checks, balances, and consequences loom over every single decision. If Emma, Ray, and Norman remove their implanted tracking devices, they could move around without detection, but their mother would find out. And right now, she's too physically close to them to risk playing that card until they absolutely have to. Is it worth Light erasing his own memory of the time he held the Death Note, with no guarantee of getting it back, on the long gamble that if he truly then has nothing to hide, the events that he's predicted will play out in such a way that allows him to regain them, and potentially truly clear his name in the eyes of the law? How does one invite the student body president to the movies without it seeming like a date when it totally is? And is it worth potentially upsetting your advantageous relationship position? All equally important questions in the mind of these characters, and all fantastic to watch play out on screen. So when all's over, please tell me where I can find more of these shows. No, seriously, I love this sort of thing. It's been one of my favorite kinds of stories since I started realizing my favorites were playing by the same handbook. Series like these have created some of the strongest, most iconic characters out there, and it's always a delight to see. NBB storytelling creates elaborate, fabulous pieces of media that are the best I've ever had the pleasure of consuming. So this has been my little love letter to it. That's all from me today, folks. Leave your recommendations in the comments, and, of course, have mine. The Great Pretender is a show I didn't go over today, but it's one of my favorite anime of all time. If I ever tackle it, it'll be in a segment all its own. Check it out if you've got the time. I can guarantee it won't disappoint. While I've got you, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really supports my channel and everything I do. For now, thanks for watching, and good night.